Hi, it's Dr. Jack, and I'm finishing up the last two chapters of Ozma of Oz today. It's been a great book to read with you. I really love it. It has a really fun ending. This next chapter is called The Emerald City. Dorothy decided to accept Ozma's invitation to return with her to the land of Oz. There was no greater chance of her getting home from Eve than from Oz, and the little girl was anxious to see once more the country where she had encountered such wonderful adventures. By this time, Uncle Henry would have reached Australia in his ship and had probably given her up for lost. So he couldn't worry any more than he did if she stayed away from him a while longer. So she would go to Oz. They bade goodbye to the people of Eve, and the king promised Ozma that he would ever be grateful to her and render the land of Oz any service that might lie within his power. And then they approached the edge of the dangerous desert, and Ozma threw down the magic carpet, which at once unrolled far enough for all of them to walk upon it without being crowded. Tik-Tok, claiming to be Dorothy's faithful follower, because he belonged to her, had been permitted to join the party, and before they started, the girl wound up his machinery as far as possible, and the copper man stepped off as briskly as any one of them. Ozma also invited Billina to visit the land of Oz, and the yellow hen was glad enough to go where new sights and scenes awaited her. They began the trip across the desert early in the morning, and as they stopped only long enough for Billina to lay her daily egg, before sunset they spied the green slopes and wooded hills of the beautiful land of Oz. They entered it in the Munchkin territory, and the king of the Munchkins met them at the border and welcomed Ozma with great respect, being very pleased by her safe return. For Ozma of Oz ruled the king of the Munchkins, the king of the Winkies, the king of the Quadlings, and the king of the Gillikins, just as those kings ruled their own people. And this supreme ruler of the land of Oz lived in a great town of her own, the Emerald City, which was in the exact center of the four kingdoms of the land of Oz. The Munchkin king entertained them at his palace that night, and in the morning they set out for the Emerald City, traveling over a road of yellow brick that led straight to the jewel-studded gates. Everywhere the people turned out to greet their beloved Ozma and to hail joyfully the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman, and the Cowardly Lion, who were popular favorites. Dorothy, too, remembered some of the people who had befriended her on the occasion of her first visit to Oz, and they were well pleased to see the little Kansas girl again, and showered her with compliments and good wishes. At one place where they stopped to refresh themselves, Ozma accepted a bowl of milk from the hands of a pretty dairymaid. Then she looked at the girl more closely and exclaimed, "Why, it's Ginger, isn't it?" "Yes, Your Highness," was the reply, as Ginger dropped a low curtsy, and Dorothy looked wonderingly at this lively-appearing person, who had once assembled an army of women and driven the Scarecrow from the throne of the Emerald City, and even fought a battle with the powerful army of Glinda the Sorceress. "I've married a man who owns 9 cows," said Ginger to Ozma, "and now I'm happy and contented and willing to lead a quiet life and mind my own business." "Where's your husband?" asked Ozma. "He's in the house nursing a black eye," replied Ginger calmly. "The foolish man would insist upon milking the red cow when I wanted him to milk the white one, but he will know better the next time, I'm sure." Then the party moved on again, and after crossing a broad river on a ferry and passing many fine farmhouses that were dome-shaped and painted a pretty green color, they came in sight of a large building that was covered with flags and bunting. "I don't remember that building," said Dorothy. "What is it?" "That is the College of Art and Athletic Perfection," replied Ozma. "I had it built quite recently, and the Wogglebug, its president, it keeps him busy, and the young men who attend the college are no worse off than they were before. You see, in this country there are a number of youths who do not like to work, and the college is an excellent place for them." And now they came in sight of the Emerald City, and the people flocked out to greet their lovely ruler. There were several bands and many officers and officials of the realm, and a crowd of citizens in their holiday attire. Thus the beautiful Ozma was escorted by a brilliant procession to her royal city, and so great was the cheering that she was obliged to constantly bow low to the right and left to acknowledge the greetings of her subjects. That evening there was a grand reception in the royal palace attended by the most important personages of Oz. Then magnificent gold medals set with precious stones were presented to each of the 26 officers, and the Tin Woodman was given a new axe studded with diamonds, and the Scarecrow received a silver jar of complexion powder. Dorothy was presented with a pretty coronet and made a Princess of Oz. And Tik-Tok received 2 bracelets set with 8 rows of very clear and sparkling emeralds. Afterward, they sat down to a splendid feast, and Ozma put Dorothy at her right and Billina at her left, where the hen sat upon a golden roost and ate from a jeweled platter. Then were placed the Scarecrow, the Tin Woodman, and Tik-Tok with baskets of lovely flowers before them, because they did not require food. The 26 officers were at the lower end of the table, and the Lion and Tiger also had seats, and were served on golden platters that held half a bushel at one time. The wealthiest and most important citizens of the Emerald City were proud to wait upon these famous adventurers, and they were assisted by a sprightly little maid named Jellia Jam, whom the Scarecrow pinched upon her rosy cheeks and seemed to know very well. During the feast, Ozma grew thoughtful, and suddenly she asked, "Where is the private?" "Oh, he's sweeping out the barracks," replied one of the generals, who was busy eating a leg of turkey, "but I've ordered him a dish of bread and molasses to eat when his work is done." "Let him be sent for," said the girl ruler. While they waited for this command to be obeyed, she inquired, "Have we other privates in the armies?" "Oh, yes," replied the Tin Woodman. "I believe there are 3 altogether." The private now entered, saluting his officers and the royal Ozma very respectfully. "What is your name, my man?" asked the girl. "Omby Amby," answered the private. "Then Omby Amby," said she, "I promote you to be Captain General of all the armies of my kingdom, and especially to be commander of my bodyguard at the royal palace." "It is very expensive to hold so many offices," said the private, hesitating. "I have no money with which to buy uniforms." "You shall be supplied from the royal treasury," said Ozma. Then the private was given a seat at the table, where the other officers welcomed him cordially, and the feasting and merriment were resumed. Suddenly Jellia Jam exclaimed, "There is nothing more to eat. The hungry tiger has consumed everything." "But that is not the worst of it," declared the tiger mournfully. "Somewhere or somehow, I've actually lost my appetite." Last chapter. Dorothy's Magic Belt. Dorothy passed several very happy weeks in the land of Oz as the guest of the royal Ozma, who delighted to please and interest the little Kansas girl. Many new acquaintances were formed, and many old ones renewed, and wherever she went, Dorothy found herself among friends. One day, however, as she sat in Ozma's private room, she noticed hanging upon the wall a picture which constantly changed in appearance, at one time showing a meadow, and another time a forest, a lake, or a village. "How curious!" she exclaimed, after watching the shifting scenes for a few moments. "Yes," said Ozma, "that is a really wonderful invention in magic. If I wish to see any part of the world or any person living, I need only to express the wish, and it is shown in the picture." "May I use it?" asked Dorothy eagerly. "Of course, my dear." "Then I'd like to see the old Kansas farm and Aunt Em," said the girl. Instantly, the well-remembered farmhouse appeared in the picture, and Aunt Em could be seen quite plainly. She was engaged in washing dishes by the kitchen window, and seemed quite well and contented. The hired men and the teams were in the harvest fields behind the house, and the corn and wheat seemed to the child to be in prime condition. On the side porch, Dorothy's pet dog Toto was lying fast asleep in the sun, and to her surprise, Old Speckles was running around with a brood of 12 new chickens trailing after her. "Everything seems all right at home," said Dorothy with a sigh of relief. "Now I wonder what Uncle Henry is doing." The scene in the picture at once shifted to Australia, where in a pleasant room in Sydney, Uncle Henry was seated in an easy chair, solemnly smoking his briar pipe. He looked sad and lonely, and his hair was now quite white, and his hands and face thin and wasted. "Oh!" cried Dorothy in an anxious voice. "I'm sure Uncle Henry isn't getting any better, and it's because he's worried about me. Ozma, dear, I must go to him at once." "How can you?" asked Ozma. "I don't know," replied Dorothy, "but let us go to Glinda the Good. I'm sure she will help me and advise me how to get to Uncle Henry." Ozma readily agreed to this plan, and caused the sawhorse to be harnessed to a pretty green and pink phaeton, and the 2 girls rode away to visit the famous sorceress. Glinda received them graciously and listened to Dorothy's story with attention. "I have the magic belt, you know," said the little girl. "If I buckled it around my waist and commanded it to take me to Uncle Henry, wouldn't it do it?" I think so, replied Glinda with a smile. And then, continued Dorothy, if I ever wanted to come back here again, the belt would bring me. In that I think you are wrong, said the sorceress. The belt has magical powers only while it is in some fairy country, such as the land of Oz or the land of Eve. Indeed, my little friend, were you to wear it and wish yourself in Australia with your uncle, the wish would doubtlessly be fulfilled, because it was made in fairyland. But you would not find the magic belt around you when you arrived at your destination. What would become of it? Asked the girl. It would be lost, as were your silver shoes when you visited Oz before, and no one would ever see it again. It seems too bad to destroy the use of the magic belt in that way, doesn't it? Then, said Dorothy after a moment's thought, I will give the magic belt to Ozma, for she can use it in her own country, and she can wish me transported to Uncle Henry without losing the belt. That is a wise plan, replied Glinda. So they rode back to the Emerald City, and on the way it was arranged that every Saturday morning Ozma would look at Dorothy in her magic picture, wherever the girl might chance to be. And if she saw Dorothy make a certain signal, then Ozma would know that the little Kansas girl wanted to revisit the land of Oz, and by means of the Gnome King's magic belt would wish that she might instantly return. This having been agreed upon, Dorothy bade goodbye to all her friends. Tick-Tock wanted to go to Australia too, but Dorothy knew that the machine man would never do for a servant in a civilized country, and the chances were that his machinery wouldn't work at all, so she left him in Ozma's care. Billina, on the contrary, preferred the land of Oz to any other country and refused to accompany Dorothy. The bugs and ants that I find here are the finest flavored in the world, declared the Yellow Hen, and there are plenty of them, so here I shall end my days, and I must say, Dorothy, my dear, you are very foolish to go back to that stupid humdrum world again. Uncle Henry needs me, said Dorothy simply, and everyone except Billina thought it was right that she should go. All Dorothy's friends of the land of Oz, both old and new, gathered in a group in front of the palace to bid her a sorrowful goodbye and to wish her a long life and happiness. After much handshaking, Dorothy kissed Ozma once more and then handed her the Gnome King's magic belt, saying, Now, dear Princess, when I wave my handkerchief, please wish me with Uncle Henry. I'm awfully sorry to leave you and the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion and Tick-Tock and everybody, but I do want my Uncle Henry. So goodbye to all of you. There's Dorothy. She's waving goodbye. Then the little girl stood on one of the big emeralds which decorated the courtyard, and after looking once again at each of her friends, waved her handkerchief. No, said Dorothy, I wasn't drowned at all, and I've come to nurse you and take care of you, Uncle Henry, and you must promise to get well as soon as possible. Uncle Henry smiled and cuddled his little niece close in his lap. I'm better already, my darling. That's the end. This is a great picture of just a scene. They painted as some of the characters in this book. I love that story so much, and I hope you did too. And it really makes me happy to think about Dorothy being able to make a little signal and go right back to the land of Oz, where she is now a princess. I will think about what I'm going to read next. I may take a day off, and then I'll probably plan on reading another adventure in the land of Oz. I'll see you later.